back to the Fortress of Filitude. Today's episode is a part 2 of 2, where I finish up my Greywater Town Buildings, my little swamp village with some buildings that have some acid damage. Last video in this series, I did the basic construction of these buildings, and in this video I finish them off. I do the painting, and I do the acid damage. So let's get to it, and you'll see how I did it. So here's where I left off in the last video with the basic construction. Got this small, mostly demolished building. Ended up not using those two other little pieces there. Main building with the additions, and then the other sort of medium-sized building. So, first thing, I decided to use some balsa wood to make the doors and do the framing around the doors and the framing around the windows. Well, I hadn't thought about using balsa wood before. It's a very easy material to use, easy to cut, easy to make impressions in, and then of course really easy to paint up. I mean, you can just use any kind of a pencil or anything with a hard point or an edge, and make the wood grain or make individual planks. Little nail holes there with the end of the pencil. Then I actually used a cooled off bead of hot glue to make the doorknob. It's hard to see there since it's clear, but when I paint it up sort of a brass color later on, it's much easier to see. Just hot glued those in. Use those other thinner strips there. Just cut them down and super glued them in. Didn't worry about exact measurements. Like I said in the first video, these buildings are meant to look a little ramshackle. Not the fanciest buildings out there. Could have used chipboard for this. I could have used more EVA foam. The balsa wood. I mean, you can get that stuff pretty cheap too. You can get a whole bag of it for, 10, 15 bucks. I bought that bag years ago. I've gotten a lot of use out of it and still have a lot of material left. Gotta be careful with super glue on the foam. It'll melt the foam, so you gotta use just a little bit. And make sure you're going to cover up the area where the glue is. Instead of doing windows everywhere where there should be a window, I decided to make shutters to have some of those windows covered. And in this window, I decided to experiment a little bit. I took some clear plastic from a package and cut up little shards to make it look like a broken out window. It didn't come out exactly the way I wanted, but it was fun to try. Just super glued it into the edges of the foam core, and then did more balsa wood there to make planks as though someone had covered up the window from the inside since it was busted out. Probably do that a little bit differently in the future. Especially since, I already had the clear plastic in there and had not painted those planks yet. I just used granny grating for the other windows. Ended up putting some black construction paper behind the windows too. I wasn't worried about these lighting up. Really wasn't worried about people seeing through there either. There's not really anything to see, but let's go ahead and seal them off just for the heck of it. Made sure to get those securely in there. Then it was time to paint with the black Mod Podge. Taking care not to cover the areas that I wanted to show damage on. The areas that I did not coat, I was going to hit with the black spray primer and hopefully simulate the damage I was expecting. Thankfully, it did turn out the way I wanted it to. You'll see here in a little bit. It just gave almost everything a good coating. It even coated the balsa wood pieces and the cereal box shingles, even though I didn't have to worry about those melting. Still wanted to give everything a good coat just for protection, just to make sure everything was sealed together good. Make sure everything that's glued together has just that extra bond. Same thing with the other buildings. Once again, just taking care not to hit the areas that I wanted to melt. So I figured this would be the one time that I would do this, and for whatever reason I would just spray it just right, or have just the right mix in the can, and then it wouldn't do what I wanted it to. But thankfully it worked the way I expected. I actually did some experimenting with some foam and some acetone just in case, and I don't know why I thought acetone would really melt the foam, but it didn't. I don't know if it's just the acetone I had or what, but that experiment didn't work. I was trying to look for alternatives in case the spray primer didn't work the way I was hoping it would. But like I said, super glue will melt the foam too, so if I had to, I could always have dabbed some super glue on those areas, and it definitely would have melted through, but sometimes that's a little bit too strong. It would have been hard to get the coverage just right. Here's the medium-sized building. I definitely wanted to get some Mod Podge on that EVA foam there. I wasn't quite sure how it would handle the spray primer, so I coated it just in case. I definitely did not want to have to rip all those shingles off and redo them. It wasn't bad, but it was a little bit tedious. It probably went quicker than I thought it did, but definitely the most tedious part of the whole build. And there's after the spray primer. You can see where it did bubble up and kind of melt the foam. And it was the effect that I expected. It's maybe not as easy to see, just with the primed, but I don't know, I think you can kind of see from the edge there how it's kind of bubbled up, somewhat melted. The texture was going to be good, even if you can't see it there with the black primer. Once I get it painted up, it really showed up good. And did not melt too much either. That was a worry too, that it would just completely melt through and leave gaping holes, other than where I wanted there to be holes. I always considered I could always try to do some kind of, add-on, something modular to kind of cover up these areas that have been damaged if I ever wanted to use these buildings in an undamaged state, but Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever go to that much trouble. Yeah, you see I carved out the top of the chimney there too. So then it was time to do the actual paint. So all the stonework I did in a medium gray. I can't remember if that's the name of that color, if it's charcoal or neutral gray. They're both about the same, but it's a nice medium gray for your stonework. This little building is all stone. Even went back and did a few of the individual cobblestones there, different colors, a lighter gray and then a tan. You'll see later. I didn't really show any footage of me painting that. I mean, there's only so much of this you need to see me paint to get the idea. Same thing, stonework on this building. Only the foundation and the corners are stone. And same thing on the big building, that first level is all stone. Didn't forget the chimney. So the wood plank on this building, I wanted it to be a lighter color that would look really dingy once I did the black wash. I didn't want to paint all of the buildings the same color. This one I thought I'd go with a lighter color. It took about 3 coats though to get really good coverage because of the black prime underneath. You can see on the stonework there where I had gone back and done some of the lighter color on some of the other stones here and there, just to give it some variation. This one I decided to do a dark green. It goes on a little bit lighter. And of course it took 2 coats, I think, to get a good coverage too. I really wanted this building to look kind of drab and dingy and kind of ugly. Both of those buildings on the wood plank, I ended up going back over them later on with a lighter color, sort of give it a sun-bleached look. Here I'm doing all the woodwork. All the wood planks, doors, window frames, on all of the buildings. I did those. The base color was just a burnt umber. And then highlighted them with a honey brown. Any type of a light brown would work. Or, you know, if you don't have that many shades of brown, you can always take your base color and add some white to it. And keep doing that till you get a shade that you like. There you go, you see I've got all the woodwork, at least the base coat done. Did a little bit of dry brush highlighting on the stone and the wood. I didn't want to put too much effort into that though before I did the wash, because I knew the wash was going to bring a lot of that down. There I am putting the lighter colored green on there. Really makes it look worn, looks old. Not worried about my acid damaged areas yet because I'm going to paint those a certain color. Did a medium brown for the shingles on that one, and did a dark gray on the shingles for the big green building. Like I said, I wanted this building for some reason, just wanted it to be ugly, even not taking into account the damage. This is a town out on the edge of a swamp. Now there I am going back and doing some additional dry brushing, sort of final step before I do the acid damage. Just kind of getting the edges, doing some highlights here and there. sort of a maroon burgundy color for a highlight on the brown shingles. It blended in well and kind of, you know, brought a little bit extra color out. Black wash. I may have some of this footage out of order here because I actually did a final dry brush on everything after the black wash. But you can see, put it on there pretty thick. Took off, you know, any area where it pooled up too much, I took it off. But then there's some areas I didn't mind it pooling a little bit, just to make it look like some grime. So you get that black wash on those light colored wood planks. You can see it really made those look dingy and dirty. Okay, maybe my footage isn't out of order. I did better than I thought. Here's my final, my final dry brushing, mostly on edges, high points. Dry brushing with the honey brown on my woodwork. I ended up putting a piece of black construction paper inside that building just to kind of block out the interior from that big open section there on that side wall. I didn't feel like detailing the interiors of those buildings, and I didn't want it to just be a big open white space either. And there's kind of the final paint before I do the acid damage. It's after all the wash and the dry brushing. Nice and old and weathered and grungy looking. Bad for foam core and cereal box and balsa wood. So I decided to test my acid paint scheme on the small building first, just in case it didn't work out too well. But, I used that bright green as the base color and then kind of went over it with a dry brush of that real light yellowish green. I like the way it turned out. I like the way it looks. The way it highlights the melted texture. So since I was happy with the way it looked on the small building, I went to work on the bigger ones. Just kind of went over everything with that dark green. Didn't have to worry about, you know, coloring out of the lines, so to speak. If I slopped it around somewhere, it's just, hey, part of the effect. And the fact that, you know, that one big building is mostly green already, the shades of green I used for the acid are different enough and bright enough that they still show up, they still stand out. Because here's the final shot. I'm going to have them on the turntable here soon anyways, but kind of wanted to look at them there on the table together first. Now's a good time to point out, I'd appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. Hit like, leave a comment. Hey, hit dislike if you don't like this or the other videos. And here's just the final shots. It's the small demolished building. Here's the medium building. I guess I could always do an external chimney someday and kind of just attach it there to the side somehow if I wanted to cover that up to get more use. And then the bigger building with its additions there on the sides. You know, we can always use these as just ruined, dilapidated buildings sometime in the future. You know, the acid damage could also be mold and rot. It could be green slime. These may not be as versatile, or, I may not be able to get as much use out of these because of how specialized they are in terms of their damage, but I can still get some use out of them. And of course the process of making them was fun and easy, and it would not be hard to make some more buildings in the future without the damage. So there you have it. We'll see you next time in the Fortress of Filitude.